Kansas City, Missouri. Today is April 7th, 2020. I have been broadcasting on Facebook since the middle of March, talking about COVID-19 and the effects in the legal way. I am so happy today to have Betsy Lynch here, who works in a number of areas, but she works with small businesses. And I have been talking to her a lot about the programs that are available to small businesses through the Stimulus Act and basic information about what is available for small business in general. And she'll get more into the meat of the matter. Hello, Betsy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
I want to say too, also on my YouTube channel, I have several videos with Betsy talking about bankruptcy. We did an interview about 9 months ago, and that's available on my YouTube channel. And of course, we'll have her back talking about that very issue sometime very soon. So basically, and Betsy, I think we were working on some slides. We may have to punt on those, but don't worry about it because you're going to fill us in. So tell us basically, if you're a small business employer, what are some of your concerns, or what would you be telling your employees right now?
Well, I think as a small business owner, you have a moral and ethical obligation to make sure your employees are safe. I don't know many small business owners who don't really value their employees that much. So I think your duty first is going to be to keep people safe. I think you need to be encouraging your sick employees to stay home. Separate your sick employees as much as possible. And anybody who's really been exposed to the virus, I think you ought to allow those people to stay home and stay away from people and self-quarantine according to the CDC guidelines. If possible, I would definitely recommend doing some thorough sanitizing and cleaning much more regularly and intensely than you have in the past, in an effort to keep those employees clean. And also give your employees some guidelines before you send them off traveling. So a lot of people travel for work. My husband travels for work. And right now they've kind of cut off all of their traveling unless it's really, really essential. And I think that's going to be really important. You as a small business owner, I think, are going to know better than anybody what your employees can and cannot take. And, employees who feel valued and appreciated and respected by their employers tend to be more productive and work better and work for you longer. So I think that should be at the forefront of everybody's mind.
Definitely. And Betsy and I are including ourselves in small business owners. We both own our own law firms and have for many years. We are experiencing a lot of the same pain that other small businesses are. And so we include us in that conversation. So taking care of your employees, I think that's such a great advice. And one of the issues that we chatted up a little bit beforehand, and I'm going to veer off topic here real quick, is what happens when an employee reveals to you that they have COVID-19? What would be some of the advice? And first of all, I'm going to say this is not legal advice. If you want Betsy's legal advice, you're going to call her and talk to her. And but we are giving general overviews here. Nothing that we're saying is telling you, the viewer, directly what to do. We're just giving general advice. So if an employee comes to an employer and says, I have COVID-19, what steps does the employer take then?
Well, I think for the first thing you need to do is make sure that person can get home safely and quarantine themselves, and obviously get them any sort of medical care that they're going to need. But the other thing you need to do is make sure that the other employees who may potentially have been exposed to that person are aware that they have been exposed to that person, so that they can take steps to come into compliance with the CDC guidelines. I think right now, at least in my personal opinion, I think anybody who's been exposed ought to be self-quarantining for 14 days. Like Amy said, this situation is pretty fluid, and the recommendations change almost daily. So by the time somebody comes to you and tells you that they've been infected with the COVID-19 virus, the recommendations for what you're supposed to do might change. So the first place you ought to go would be to the CDC website.
All right. So after you have taken measures to protect your employees, what's your next steps? What is a small business owner's next step?
Well, clearly you're going to be concerned about how to pay your bills. Clearly everyone is taking an economic hit here. No matter what your business is, no matter where you're going and what you're doing, you're going to see some kind of economic impact. Everybody needs to pay their rent. Everybody wants to pay their employees. Everybody's got a credit card bill or some sort of business loan that they need to service. And how do you do that? What do you do? One of the things that is going to come to every American as an individual is part of the CARES Act was a big stimulus bill. And so individuals who make less than $99,000 a year, couples who make less than $150,000 a year, all those people are going to get the maximum amount of stimulus an individual can get, which is $1,200 per person, $500 per kid. So a single mom or a single person is going to get $1,200. The average family of four is going to get $3,400. Now there's a sliding scale with the stimulus. So just because you make over the $150,000 mark doesn't mean you're not going to get anything, because couples who make less than $198,000 a year are still going to get something, and individuals who make less than $99,000 are still going to get something. So, okay. And I misspoke, because the maximum an individual can get if you're single, the maximum income is $75,000 a year, not $99,000. But okay, there's a sliding scale between $75,000 and $99,000.
Okay, very good. All right, so you talked about the CARES Act. Why don't you talk about the CARES Act in terms of I'm going to put a slide up here, at least I'm going to try to. The CARES Act and what that is and what it means for small business.
Well, the individual stimulus is part of the CARES Act, but a big bulk of the CARES Act is something called the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. And that is probably the most important piece of legislation in all of this for small business owners. So there have been economic injury disaster loans, and then there is the Paycheck Protection Program, which are two different pieces of legislation. They're two different things that you apply for. The really cool thing about the PPP is that a lot of the really traditional SBA application requirements for the PPP have been eliminated. So a lot of times if you want to go get an SBA loan, you've got to demonstrate good credit, you've got to personally guarantee the loan, or you have to put up some sort of collateral in order to obtain the loan. You don't have to do those with the PPP. The coolest part about the PPP, in my opinion, as a small business owner and someone who's trying to help small business owners, is that this loan, when used correctly, is 100% forgivable. So the way you calculate it is important. The way you spend it after you receive it is really important, because if you do it right, you're not going to have to repay it. It's almost like a grant.
Okay. Okay, great. I mean, I've heard bits and pieces, and I think that probably other people have heard bits and pieces, and I just kind of get into the heart of the PPP and what the process may be.
Sure. Most businesses who have fewer than 500 employees are going to be eligible for a PPP loan. The loan amount is calculated based on this quirky little math problem, which I don't think is necessarily important for the purposes of the webinar, but I can certainly go through that, particularly if you want to give us a call afterwards. We can help you calculate it if you have questions. The most important thing I think you need to understand about the process right now is that it's going to be important to start now. We believe there's going to be huge demand for these funds. We're already seeing it. Friday, on April 3rd, last Friday, was the first day banks could start processing loan applications. And it was near impossible for them to get up to speed with the amount of applications that they were going to receive and how to process them. A lot of banks are going to require additional information from you. The process is going to vary based on who the lender is. But I would recommend that you reach out to any bank that you already have an established relationship with. There is a sample application on the SBA website. So you can go to www.sba.gov, and they have a blank application that you can fill out, send to your local banker, and just say, hey, I want to apply for one of these. Can you help me with that? Now, if you don't get a response from your employer or from the bank immediately, that is not unusual. They're getting bombarded with these things right now. So getting a phone call back or a response to an email is difficult. And it's not unusual. It's not the bank's fault. It's not that the banker is a bad person. They just are literally wading through so much information right now. It's hard to keep up.
Okay. So the Paycheck Protection Program, you apply through a bank.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the bank is the one that you will apply and also give your supporting documentation. Is that right?
Correct. I would think most banks are going to ask for a copy of your personal and business tax returns for the past year or two, probably a copy of your most recent profit and loss statement. Obviously, you're going to need your EIN. Any other, anything that will help them understand how much your payroll costs are.
Right.
And so this loan, I'm calling it a loan, can be used to pay salary, wages, commissions, health benefits, retirement contributions that are made by an employer, and it can be used for payroll taxes. So all of those things go into the payroll calculation, which is then multiplied by 2.5 in order to get to the loan amount that you're eligible for.
Okay. And I'm just going to give my, when I applied, what my process was like. I've never had an SBA loan. When I started my firm, I just started it. I took some credit card debt out at the beginning to get it started, but basically just started it. But I had a relationship with the bank that I have banked at for many years since I started my firm in 2007. I emailed them. They emailed me back the application. They had an application. They have the federal application, which everybody is going to fill out. And then they had a separate application. And with that, it had what I needed for documentation. And they also, when they have the formula, they had it in their application. So I was able to do that. I am unclear. And I did put on there the contract employees that I have. I have 2 contract employees. I did not understand if they were covered, but I put them in there because I figure the worst thing they're going to tell me is no. So I don't know if you have clarification on, and the other thing is, so I sent it to my bank and I have not heard back. So I'm just sort of waiting, and I understand that is probably very normal.
Not unusual at all. I mean, if they responded, they would probably say, "We got it. We're working on it. Hang in there."
Right.
One of the things you should point out too is, Amy, let's say hypothetically you filled out your application wrong. And let's say hypothetically you've miscalculated it and you get this check from the government and you either calculated the loan amount wrong or you misspend the money after you receive it. The part of the loan that is not forgivable because you misspent it or you misappropriated it or whatever it is, if you screw it up, guess what? That's just a loan you have to pay back, and they charge you 1%. So in 6 months, when your business returns to normal, or a year from now when things are stabilized, the payments are deferred for 6 months anyway. And all you got to remember is, I took out that loan to get me through the crunch. They're charging me 1% interest, which is practically nothing. And I'll just pay it back when I get back up on my feet.
Okay.
So even if you screw it up, you haven't screwed it up that bad.
Right. Although I do want to, okay, there's a couple of things. First, we have a question from the comments, but I also want to say you are going to have to, the small business owner is going to have to be quite careful in how they distribute the proceeds and tracking that. They open themselves up not only to the interest if you have to repay the loan, but certainly you just want to be super careful when you do get the loan proceeds. And that's something Betsy helps small businesses with is, the compliance part. It's not even, it's the application part now, but there's a compliance part later, and it's going to be important. And I want to caution people about that part of it, but that's
Right.
neither here nor there right now. The question in the comments is, what about the states? Are they helping too? Should we be contacting the state for any additional help? I have a couple answers to that. Do you have any answers to that, Betsy, right now?
Well, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I do know that
I want to hear what you have to say first.
The city of Kansas City has economic development loans up to they've allotted 500,000. Obviously, drop in the bucket, but they do have an application process. In addition, if you go to the SCORE website, which is sort of a small business website it might be for the whole nation, but I know that Kansas City has one. They have links to several banks and bank consortiums that are giving away money either through loans or grants. The state of Missouri also has a program. I am not familiar with it. It is not a grant, it is a loan. And what I will do is I will put links up in the comments of this Facebook Live. This Facebook Live will eventually live on my YouTube page and eventually be a page on my website. And I'm going to expand that information, and I will reply directly to the person that asked that. I want you to have the right information. I know that there is more help available than just the feds. It does not sound like it is as generous in terms of not having to pay it back as the feds.
That's what I was going to point out. Whatever options are available from the states, whatever state you're living in, I don't know if it's Kansas or Missouri or some other state, but there will be state money available, but it's going to be few and far between. One of the things that I would like to point out with the PPP, there is a verification process after you've gotten the money, and you're going to have to go back and prove to the federal government that you use this loan appropriately. You didn't go to Harrah's Casino and go on some wild rampage. So the documentation process is going to need to be rather thorough. I would recommend receiving the loan and putting it into a separate bank account so that you're able to document every transaction going in and out of that bank account to be for payroll taxes, wages, and health benefits and retirement contributions. The other thing that should be pointed out about the PPP is that you can use it to pay things like rent, interest on your mortgage, if you've got that, interest on equipment loans, which a lot of my contractor clients have. You can use it for utility payments. You can use it to pay for expenses related to keeping your business operational due to COVID-19. So if you have to buy a bunch of masks for all of your employees, if you have to buy gloves for all of your employees, if you have to, one of the things I had to do for my law firm was get a subscription to DocuSign, and I had to get a subscription to Zoom because I can't operate without those things right now. So it can be used to pay for all of those things. But 75% of this PPP loan has to be used for payroll costs. Has to, if you want it to be forgivable. If you're not concerned about that, again, it's going to be a 1% loan. Whatever you've got to pay back is virtually interest-free, and it's going to be deferred for 6 months. But,
Okay.
The woman who was asking about other funds being available from the states or from the city, the other thing you might consider if you're looking for an alternative to the PPP would be the economic injury disaster loan. Now, the EIDL is a loan. It is a true loan. There is not a forgivable component to it like there is with the PPP.
Okay, let's hold. We're gonna move
Okay.
on to that. We're gonna finish up with PPP. The gist of it. Oh, there's one more question I have for you. When it was first, announced, it seemed like there was an 8-week cap on that, on the grant portion. Is that your understanding, or is it now further than that?
What do you mean an 8-week cap?
It was 8 weeks is what you could get repaid, or that would turn into a grant as opposed to a loan.
Well, the loan amount is calculated by 2.5. So I guess if you were going to, your monthly payment, you're getting 2.5 months, which is basically 10 weeks, not 8 weeks.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on. There's 2 more topics we're going to discuss on this. The next one is Betsy referenced, is the economic injury disaster loan. We're also going to be talking about what are the other options if you aren't going to take those loans out, because there are some benefits to small business that does not have to do with a loan application, all this. And we want to make sure that people know about that. I think it's really important. But we're going to move on to the economic injury disaster loan. And why don't you fill in people about what's going on there?
Sure. The EIDL, it's a very similar process. It's done through it's an SBA loan. Again, they have a sample application on the SBA's website. You're going to apply to a lender for the EIDL. The EIDL is going to be capped at 2 million, whereas the PPP is capped at 10 million. So depending on the size of your agency and your company, you're going to get more with the PPP than you are with the EIDL. But if you have equipment you need to pay for, vendors you need to pay, especially if they're necessary to continuing operations of your business, an EIDL might be really helpful. You are going to have to give what's typically called, what the typical SBA loan is going to be requiring, which is a personal guarantee. The loan isn't forgivable. I believe the interest rate's capped at 4%. And then they have a separate application where you can do an EIDL loan advance, and you can get $10,000 before your loan's approved.
Okay. And I'm going to mention 2 things here. One is you don't have to take any of this. Like once it comes through, you're going to have to sign on the dotted line to agree to the terms. So, I know that with the EIDL cash advance 10,000, they're asking for your bank account. Nobody's putting that in your bank account. They're just getting it so that the wheels will go faster later on. In the end, you will have a contract, you will have a loan, and you will be able to sign off on it.
One of the questions that was posed to me the other day was, an EIDL, one of the things you have to certify with it is that, but for the disaster, you could have paid your bills. And right. A lot of my clients are already coming to me because they're struggling.
Right.
And so that might be difficult for some of those people to certify. The PPP doesn't really have that requirement. The other thing is I've got clients right now who are going, my cash flow is okay right now. I did this work over the winter and now the money's coming in and I'm okay. But I've got these 3 new contracts that are up for renewal in a couple of months. I don't know if they're going to renew. I don't know if they're going to do that. My summer may be really bleak after all of this. So they're going, do I apply for the PPP? And most attorneys are taking a pretty liberal stance with that. So in the PPP, you do have to certify that you need the loan. There is an economic, financial reason for you to need this loan, but that doesn't have to be imminent. It doesn't say it has to be imminent. And if 2 months from now, you're really going to be up a creek if you don't get this money, I think that would qualify. I don't think the federal government's going to crucify you for doing that.
Definitely. And I think it's going to be just be careful with the money. That's the part of it that's going to be that when you do get it, you need to be careful. Okay,
Absolutely.
so
I would highly recommend you work with a legal professional who knows what they're doing, who understands the law, so that if you truly want this to be 100% forgiven, you're taking all the right steps to make sure it is. I had somebody the other day say, well, if you just read the loan, I'm sure, know what you're signing before you sign it. Well, a lot of people don't understand it. And to be perfectly honest, the regs that were just handed down about it don't exactly line up to the exact language of the bill that was passed. So the idea that the average Joe is going to understand all the nuances that are going on with this thing, I just don't think that everybody is going to be in a shape to do that, nor do I think you're going to be expected to. That's why we have legal professionals around.
Right. And we're going to mention this, but Betsy is available for this kind of consultation. This is part of the work that she does. She would take you from the loan application all the way through to the loan payback and what that schedule looks like. Here's a question that I just thought of. Are attorney's fees considered part of the grant? Could that be forgivable?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, there
nice
you go.
try.
Yeah.
But, everybody's getting the big stimulus. So I suppose it's possible. I mean, you can use the stimulus however you want. There's no cap on that. There's no requirement for it. I mean, the government's giving it away.
Right.
And if you're below a certain income level, they're not going to be asking you to document it, and that income's tax free. So however you choose to spend the money is up to you.
Right. Yeah. I think when we think small business, sometimes that varies widely and I think, the small business, I am my small business. I have 2 contract employees. There's many people like me that are sole proprietors that just run their own business. They are eligible. You are eligible for this loan. You are eligible for this grant. The last thing we're going to talk about, and again, I'm going to repeat the date. It's April 7th of 2020. I want to make sure that people know that this information is fluid and it could be changing. I've heard that it could be extended, that it could be extended to businesses over 500. There's all sorts of things. So we will definitely have Betsy back.
Yeah, I think they're working on phase 4 right now, which is supposed to address employers between 500 employees and 10,000, which I think will be good. And then it's my assumption that if the money does run out from the PPP, I think there will be a 5th stimulus bill to flood in some more money. So if you didn't get in this first week of applications that they're accepting, don't panic. I mean, the application period is open until June 30th. So there's a reason they have it open until then. And, I don't know about you all, but I get notifications daily and everybody's changing their rules daily. And I would imagine by June 30th, we're going to be working by a whole new set of rules by then too.
Right. So. Definitely. Okay, now we're going to move on to, and this is the final topic, of businesses that will not be participating in either of those 2 loans. There is still some benefits that was written into the CARE Acts, and we want to just chat about that real quick. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, if you're not participating, what are some benefits of the CARE Acts for small business?
Sure. So SBAs who aren't going to participate in the PPP, you're still going to get a FICA deferral, which means that even if you don't apply for these loans, 100% of your Social Security taxes that are due between March 27th and the end of the year can be deferred. You're going to have to pay back half of them by the end of 2021, and you got to pay back the other half by the end of 2022. So you don't have to pay your FICA until the end of the year, you don't have to pay the FICA for this year, but you will have to pay it back. It's a deferment.
Okay, great. And then the employee retention credit.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the Social Security taxes is that we believe there's going to be a lot of credits on your tax returns over the next 2 or 3 years that are probably going to help alleviate some of that liability from the FICA taxes. So I would recommend deferring it, even if you can pay it, unless you just want to get a big tax refund, which is possible.
Right. Okay. We have another question in the comments. This is the second part is kind of specific, but the first part, are the employee federal tax payment portion of the payroll permissible or not? I'm assuming that means with the loan forgiveness.
Are the what permissible?
Employee federal tax payment portion of payroll. And I'm not quite sure what that means. Let me go on to the second question and see if I can get some clarification.
If it's under what's called payroll taxes, it is included in your payroll calculation, and the PPP can be used to pay it. I'm not 100% sure which tax you're talking about. So you might want to check with your accountant to make sure you understand which tax is due.
Okay, great. 401k safe harbor payments that are set aside each payroll, but not contributed but for once a year. Are those amounts included in the PPP?
So the PPP calculation is based off of a year average. So whatever the average has been over the past 12 months, if they only contribute payroll taxes, or you only contribute to the retirement account once a year, that would be an annual average. So you're not, even though your payment might be $10,000 for the month of March, if it's $1,000 a month the rest of the year, you're going to end up averaging that out. So you can't just take the 10 grand into your calculation because it's due next month. Does that make sense? It's an annual average.
It sure does.
And you're only going to include the retirement contributions that are made by the employer.
Okay. All right. I am sharing Betsy's information. I would suggest that if you are in the weeds on this, and even if you think you're not in the weeds, that you call and consult with her. I don't know how much like a free consultation she would give in terms of probably 10 minutes on the phone, but then she's paying bills too, and will need to charge and will charge. Well worth your time and money to pay for advice from Betsy or any other legal professional. I guess I should mention that this Facebook webinar might be considered an advertisement, and that you should not purchase based on solely on advertisements. That's part of what Missouri, we have to say in Missouri on advertisements for lawyers. But she's an excellent attorney. She will give you good, frank advice. You can hear that right now from her, the advice that she's giving and the way she's giving it. She's definitely one of the lawyers that, and like most lawyers should be, if they don't know the answer, she will find out the answer. She's not going to give you information that she thinks you want to hear. She's going to be based in fact and in law. I consider her a friend, and I am happy that she was here today. Is there anything that I should be asking you that I did not ask you?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've touched on most of it. I just want to make sure everybody understands that the rules that we discussed today are not the only rules you need to be aware of with these loans, and that each business operates differently. There are requirements for how many employees you need to retain. There are a lot of different requirements that may or may not pertain to each business. And in order to really understand how the whole loan or the whole law applies to your business, I would really encourage you to reach out to your accountant, your financial advisors, your lawyers, anybody who has really been in the weeds with this law, because it's so new. I mean, it's April 7th, and this was passed on the 27th of March. So, the idea that anybody has all the answers right now is kind of comical, because your banker may not know the answer, and they're going to come to their lawyer, and the lawyer may not necessarily know the answer, and they're going to go to the accountant, and it's just going to go in a circle like that. And it's really going to operate like that until we can all get a little bit of breathing room and really see what's going on, not just with the economy, but in the world. But at the same time, there are regulations that are being handed down by the Treasury Department. We've got to read those. We've got to be able to implement them. And there's been absolutely no court who's made any sort of ruling on this law. So, you know, laws are subject to interpretation, and how judges are going to interpret those things. I think judges are going to be pretty generous to the people who've obtained these loans and tried to use them, made a good faith effort to use them properly, and use them with the advice of counsel, things like that. And as long as you're not doing something really flamboyant with this money and really misappropriating it, I think it's going to do what it is designed to do, which is stabilize the economy and stabilize your business and help you keep your business.
Right. I have a question for you. Just one last question that just popped up. What if you are paying people, I mean, you're not laying anybody off, but your business is closed due to it's not an essential service, but you're still paying people. You've applied for the loan in hopes that you'll still be able to pay for people. That's okay. I mean, that's within the bounds because you're still paying them, right?
Well, sure. I mean, that's exactly what this is designed for. It's so that you don't go out of business and you can keep your people employed and they're not paying, you know, are they going to apply for unemployment and get money from the government, or are they going to get a PPP loan and have their employer pay them? Which is better?
Right.
You know?
Right.
You pick.
Right. Yeah. Betsy, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I am happy to give this information and trying to get information out to people. The previous Facebook Lives, we had a consumer protection attorney on. We had some state reps that talked about what the resources were available through the state of Missouri. We had an unemployment Facebook Live. I'm hopeful to be back next week with maybe a workman's comp attorney, because of people working from home. That's going to look very different, and sort of like what that looks like if you do get injured on the job, but you're in your own home. I think it's going to present a unique challenge. I also want to have a criminal law attorney on that is going to discuss basically what happens to criminal cases when the court is not processing them, at least for people that are not incarcerated right now. Pretty much their proceedings are ground to a halt, which is a problem, or it could be a good thing for a criminal case, because criminal cases get better the older they are usually. But anyway, that's for another day. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Betsy's number is on. We'll attach it on the screen, and then my phone number is 816-471-1114. You can visit my website, and also I would love it if you would like my Facebook page, Amy the Attorney. Betsy, thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Amy, thank you so much. You do such a good job with these, and I know it really helps people, and I hope we've done something to help people out today. So thank you.
Definitely. All right. We will talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye. All right, I'm changing. All right. See you, girl. I'm going to call you in a second.
Hey, great.
Wait. No, you were still on. So hold on.
Okay.
I'll call you.